Welcome back to Steamboat Real Estate and Investing, your inside track to real estate, mountain living, and intelligent investing here in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, with me, your host, Ryan Cox. If you've been wondering what is in store for the base area, if you've heard about upcoming development, you're going to learn a whole lot more about it today. I'm going to be joined by Kerry Shea, the Director of Sales for 1700 Ski Times Square, one of the handful of new developments coming soon to the base area. There is a lot of high-end luxury product that will start construction over the next few years in the base area, and we're going to talk about those projects, starting with 1700 Ski Times Square, which is a 23 residence project right there in Ski Times Square. We'll also touch upon the Astrid, which is going to deliver 64 residential units, the Stockman, which is 95 private residential units plus 59 hotel rooms. We'll talk about Wild Air, and also the Amble, which is just completing construction and starting to close contracts and deliver those 42 residences. We'll also look at existing inventory. How does all of this luxury development affect existing inventory? Does a rising tide lift all boats? And we'll touch upon the broader steamboat market. I'm excited to dig in on all of this with Kerry. He is a seasoned developer and real estate sales professional here in Steamboat. So let's jump straight into the podcast. Welcome back to Steamboat Real Estate and Investing. Today I am joined by Kerry Shea, the sales director of 1700 Ski Times Square. Kerry, how are you?
Doing great today. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you bet.
So Kerry, you're working on this really exciting project, which we'll get into. But before we dive into that, you have quite a bit of experience in development and sales with projects around the base area. Can you just give us a little bit of an overview of your tenure here in Steamboat, what you did in Wild Horse Meadows,
Sure.
and kind of what you've been involved with?
You bet. I had the pleasure, actually, I spent in my prior life, I was in IT telecommunications space for a number of years, corporate, and had an opportunity to actually move back. I originally moved to Steamboat in the early 90s. I was supposed to be for a 1-year ski sabbatical. We know how those happen.
Yes,
but got out, finished my degree, and moved back. A good friend of mine I played hockey with joined a development firm here, Resort Ventures West, and they were in need of internal sales and marketing leadership. So joined the team there right as the entitlement process was getting finalized for Wild Horse Meadows. Mm-hmm. And so we brought that to market back. We're talking 2006 era. 2007 is when I landed. I got here really just in time to launch Trailhead Lodge, which is, at the time was one of the largest single day launch events. We put about $57 million of real estate under contract in a single day launch event.
Wow.
Happened to be July 25th of 2007, just as the stock market and one of the first laces of the first shoe to fall with Lehman Brothers and everything else that really, so my introduction to real estate was in arguably one of the toughest times that we've ever seen. So I didn't really know any different other than, really, long sales cycles, being able to work through very challenging environments and really reinforcing the merits and why certainly myself and my family moved to Steamboat, really that longer term vision and understanding the economic cycles and other things that naturally happen that we're all kind of faced with, that we're still in the place we want to be.
Yeah.
And that at the bedrock and kind of at the foundational level over the many cycles in the past 2 decades that now we've been here working on various projects, that's really been, that point of stability to be able to get through. And it's, that was such a challenging time, and so many projects had to go through restructure and traded hands. And, I just feel very fortunate that we're still here.
Yes.
And a lot of those relationships and, interactions with brokers and individuals like yourself here in town that, it really was a good test and relationship and trust and confidence, and knowing at the end of the day when we're dealing with tough situations, who can I rely on to get through, situations like that. And at the end of the day, what is the quality of the product? Mm-hmm. And to see now 2 decades later stuff that we envisioned as being, still enjoyed by not just the kids, but their kids and their grandkids coming up through the ranks, certainly part of the enjoyment why I've always loved new product sales and new projects and development. So, it was just kind of funny when we launched that. We were supposed to be out of that project, which was, a master plan community north of 1 million square feet of mixed use development by 2012. And Here we are, 2026, and some of those internal parcels have switched hands, obviously, since then. And it's still not, full in its completed state. We're probably another, 5-10 years out of that horizon.
So fast forward from '08 to COVID, you were in the midst of, was it the Elevate project, bringing the Elevate project online?
We were amidst Flat Tops, our single family home project, a 21 resident project, kind of a semi-custom process that we rolled out, working with individual homeowners on customizing floor plans and doing some things, but from a standard kind of menu, if you will. And we subsequently had another parcel that we had just completed entitlement, so fully approved. And then March 20th happened of 2020. And my partners and I were prepared for yet another downturn. And we said, hey, listen, well, fortunately, between the projects, we were very diligent, very conservative in terms of the feasibility and making sure that we really just kind of kept with market demand is really what we were trying to position these projects around. And lo and behold, come June, July, when all of a sudden people are like, wait a minute, these resort markets, whether it's mountain or beach or wherever, all of a sudden the demand just went through the roof. And so our timing from a development standpoint, you couldn't have asked, for a better time, especially being in charge, in our partnership for the sales and marketing effort. I was like, yeah, this is fantastic.
Let's go.
Let's do this. But with every cycle and every situation, there's obviously something there that normally balances things out. And we were fortunate at the time, we were very vertically integrated in terms not only the entitlement and the true development activity, but also construction. So we had our construction company. So we were dealing with then, supply chain, material shortage, cost increases that spiked super quick, about as quick as the demand did. So that was definitely a challenging time to, fortunately we had phased that project as well. We had 4 buildings that we kind of in sequence kind of worked through. At the time, it was a 24 unit project, and I had north of 150 people on a wait list that were ready to, get on board and send me the contract as soon as you can, kind of thing.
Yeah. And with that project, obviously construction costs, as you alluded to, just skyrocketed, shot up. So you had enough elasticity with the contracts themselves and then the phasing of those contracts to make the project viable, obviously.
It was able to work out, for sure. Nice. But, it's one of those in retrospect of just, what would you change or do different? And, at the end of the day, really proud of that project. It's one that, the feedback of the existing homeowners has been very, very positive. Yeah. I think it hit a very interesting and needed product segment of more of, and what we saw, kind of that COVID impact that I think is been very sticky and changed a lot of habits just for us, as we were talking about, just, whether it's dual locations, multiple home kind of scenarios, that we saw the need and the desire for people to stay in their second and third homes for longer durations. So getting into more of not the condominium, but the townhome, more the single family type residential product segment and design really has proven to be very desirable and continues to be at this point.
Yeah, I think I just saw there was a unit just listed within the last couple of weeks for $3.6 million, and I think with the short-term overlay map too, that of course has come to fruition since you started the development.
For sure,
the value of those properties in particular have really done well.
Yes, no, they have.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother part of the conversation in terms of that short-term rental, change in landscape and the boundaries there, and so certainly anyone that's within that green zone, seeing that level of impact.
Yeah,
and we're that project being right in the middle.
Right in the middle of it. So let's jump to what's happening today. So first of all, congratulations on your involvement in 1700 Ski Time Square. It seems like an incredible project. I think a lot of people are curious to hear about what's going on at the base area. Obviously, there's been momentum with the investment that the ski area has been making, but now we have a lot of outside development investment coming in as well. So for those of us that aren't familiar with the project, can you just share a little bit about what's going on, how many units, product type?
Sure. Yeah, happy to.
Give us the feel.
Yeah, and our prior conversation on there's quite a bit that actually is coming to market right now, but this is a long time coming, as we were talking about the prior cycles, that 2007-9 area, when just before then, Ski Time Square was the spot to be in town in terms of vibrancy, activity, music, restaurants, retail, and then all that gets demolished with the plan to redevelop, and then the market, drops. So I think it's kind of a long time coming, and your reference point of Altera and their investment of $250 million, it's no surprise that third-party developers, after seeing that level of confidence and investment in the operating asset of a top-rated family ski resort in the country, if not North America, So not entirely surprising. And so our project, 1700 Ski Times Square, we took a lot of time, myself and my development partners involved in the project, including Catherine Coro, who is the visionary and kind of the original, not kind of, she was the impetus and the original purchaser of the land. And then our other partner, David Hill, who we date back to the Resort Ventures West days, was prior vice president of North American Development for IntraWest. Basically has touched every mountain resort base area in North America. Amazing experience between the two of them. Catherine coming from more the financing side, capital and otherwise raising upwards of $6 billion in real estate capital for various projects. So a wonderful team that I was super honored and excited to join. And in analyzing what was happening and occurring in the base area the past number of years, the project, just for orientation, is neighboring the clock tower building. So between the clock tower and the ski corps parking garage is really that first experience as you come into the Ski Times Square corridor. Was taking a look at this acre parcel and saying, what ultimately is the makeup of the base area? What is going to happen from an activation, from a product mix, from a commercial hotter bed base versus as you kind of retreat off the base area of more of a residential feel. And that's where we honed in to offering something that truly is quieter, that's more private, that isn't as active and busy as the true beachfront, which is needed. And that's where projects like the Stockman, we're really excited about hearing what Altair and their partnership with Marquee to bring in that project that is right at the base, that ski in, ski out, going to be very, very active.
Right in the heart of
right in the
all
heart
the
of it.
action.
Yeah. And again, it's something we've desired in this 4- and 5-star type hospitality experience. And with their partnership and announcing recently with Auberge as their hospitality partner, is going to be a wonderful addition.
And that's, just to pause there, that's 95 residential units and about 59 hotel rooms. Is
That's
that right?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's a larger commercial building. And taking a look and understanding that to say, hey, listen, if we can, as that next first layer of the onion, if you will, provide a true residential experience, but the convenience of, and you're talking about 1,000 feet to the base of the ski area. I mean, we're talking a 3-minute walk, in essence operates like a ski in, ski out property, but have the convenience of, full residential amenities, design, layout. And I referenced my prior, acknowledgement of our experience at Wild Horse Meadows was, how do you program longer durations? How do you kind of set up the properties and the development for that type of use? And so we took kind of that angle and that lens to be able to say, okay, what does this site kind of look like in doing the land plan and working with our architects, and came up with a really neat design in terms of the overall makeup. It's smaller. It's boutique in a 23-unit condominium project split between 2 buildings. And what really neat aspect of the project and what that allowed us to do is to program a courtyard, a central courtyard. So think of it of like your own backyard or like a Central Park, if you will, if you kind of draw a parallel with New York City, and the fact that now we've introduced a green space location in a more commercial district where you can walk outside your front door and have a nice, very secure, very private type experience for our homeowners and guests. And so that was a really unique opportunity that, we really wanted to explore and ultimately deliver on in an area that is going to be busy. So it really kind of instituted that first residential thought into the project. It also afforded us some really unique abilities to maximize view corridors. So now we've got 2 separate buildings. Our aspect actually looking back up at the mountain, even though we're off, provided even better views as a result of that. So that was kind of the first phase and kind of take a look at the project. And then we said, okay, from a true unit mix, what's really voiding the market? What can we enhance in terms of product offering? And that's where we honed into larger floor plans. So we're a project like the Amble, who just recently started closing their pre-construction contracts, tend to focus a little bit those smallers, the 1, 2s, some 3s, and just a couple 4s. We said, hey, listen, if we can start at the 3, 4, 5, 6 bedroom floor plans, we felt that really was, meeting the need of the multi-generational, larger family, longer duration type mindset. And so we've been excited about, since we obtained our approvals in the fall, of being able to get out to the market, get some market feedback. We've launched a pre-construction reservation program, for instance, and have had great response in terms of, yeah, actually those floor plans and what you guys have designed and developed is what we're looking for.
Are you seeing, I'm going to interject with a question, are you seeing more traction on the lower bedroom count or the higher bedroom count? Because that 5-6 bedroom, I mean, I think you're right, that product doesn't really exist. I'm curious, how has that been with the reservations?
We're kind of across all boards and
Okay.
spectrums here. Yeah, you've got, and we can get into, pricing and what based on these square footages, and just for range, we're talking about 2,300 square feet to about 4,000 is where we cap out for our 6-bedroom floor plan. In addition to that, that's just the finished square footage. We do have a number of decks and exterior square footage that we really wanted to maximize the outdoor living component. So now you're getting into, gross is in the 4,000 to 5,000 plus.
Wow.
So it's sizable footprint, right? To be able to enjoy. But we're seeing interest level across kind of all
categories,
all spectrums, and from, families that have, kids that have graduated and they're moving on, and so they're actually downsizing. They're looking to retreat from, larger single family properties they have in and around the valley or outside of town. So a 3-bedroom actually works well, that they have a little space for maybe a guest or two or a family member. And then to the top end that, hey, listen, we're very interested in your penthouse. Buyers that have experience, even for instance at One Steamboat Place, where they topped out at a 4-bedroom, they're saying, hey, listen, we'd love another, bedroom. Is there a 5 or 6-bedroom layout that we could really graduate into?
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to see that.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned reservations. How have reservations flowed in? You've got 23 units for sale.
Yep.
What do the reservations look like?
Yeah, they've been, when we launched that kind of going into this winter, which unto its own had its interesting challenges and parts of engagement with anyone looking in real estate.
We're looking forward.
No doubt. Well, good to see this past week we're getting sno here.
That's right. We got about 22 inches, 20 inches on top of the mountain.
I've never seen so many people happy to see that amount of snow here in May.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, we again, I think it relays to, and we were talking through how much development we're talking about right now, but there hasn't been a lot of development almost for 2 decades.
Yeah.
A solid 15-year run that, we released a reservation program and around 20 reservations for our first 9 units in the project.
Wow.
We saw that, and we're able to get into acknowledging price ranges as we're going through the bid process with our general contractor. And, for your audience and for your understanding, our price, we're, in the neighborhood of $5 million to about $11 million is where our price range is for our project. And being open and honest and very transparent with our buyers and brokers in that regard. And with that knowledge that we have seen reservations come in to say, okay, we understand that. A lot of the buyers, and I'm sure you see this, buyers are savvy. They're doing their homework. They're very well aware. And, we've been kind of coining it this icon and epic response in terms of they're looking elsewhere. They're looking at, they've got flexibility in terms of the recreational piece of kind of chasing snow, if you will. But they're checking out Jackson Hole. They're checking out Snowmass and Park City and Mammoth. And, historically we've been off the grid. We haven't been nearly as commercialized and kind of brand forward as the Vales and Aspens of the world, to the point of attraction for, I think, a lot of buyers, but also from just where we sat from a pricing standpoint. And even with where the graduation and where we're at now, any new product at the base area is $2,000 a square foot and or north. Stockman even broaching north of $3,000 a square foot. You take these projects, you place them at the base of Snowmass, Telluride, and you're seeing $4,000, $5,000, if not $6,000 a square foot. We're seeing in some resale and some other project. That's been an interesting part of the recent kind of next post-COVID conversation of appreciation and other things that we've seen. And there's a large part that certainly is driven on just cost of construction.
Yes.
We know that, from just material costs, labor, insurance is another one that has seen a pretty significant increase.
That's a major one.
But, just to see where we're kind of stacking up in that regard, we've had a number of conversations of buyers just saying, listen, even with that, your project is a big value from other, areas and other projects we're seeing in and around base areas.
So just to drill down on that, it sounds like based on the square footage you referenced and the price points, would you say you're in the $2,000 to $3,000 a foot range then?
Yeah, we're in the mid, kind of average it out about, in that mid $2,000 a square foot.
Okay. And it's really interesting to hear that, the conversations you're having, you still have people that are considering these other resort areas, the Vales, the Park Cities, you name it. How do you, Steamboat is so unique and so different to all of those resorts, which you could argue maybe are a little bit more similar to one another. How do you sell against that? I'm just curious. What's that conversation look like? And I mean, obviously you love Steamboat, I love Steamboat,
Yeah.
but when you're having a conversation with that profile of buyer, I'm just curious, what does that look like?
Well, in this past 4 months has been a great exercise in kind of reinforcing what are the points of attraction. If it's not the champagne powder that people are rushing here to enjoy, like what are the merits when it's challenging? You take that out of the equation. And that's where just, for me and our conversations got back to the community. It really is the fabric and the makeup of what Steamboat is. And that understated, genuine, not to, use these cliches of just the Western and very welcoming, attitude and atmosphere here. And I think that's the piece as you look at these other locations that is inherent to us, that's not something that you find in a lot of these other destinations. And so I think that's the piece that continues to get reinforced for me, especially as we start graduating these different price bands and these different conversations, is that at the core of it, that's why people want to be here. And that truly is unique. It's a Steamboat that no one else has. So yeah, I mean, this past winter has been a great exercise in reinforcing that. And
pulling back and assessing what is it besides just the skiing that we value, what makes it special.
It's the quality of life. It's, the altitude, as, we talked through with baby boomers that, looking at a Vail or Breckenridge, Summit County, when you're trying to grasp for air and oxygen at 9,000 feet, us at relatively the sea level of 6,000 seems a little bit more approachable, and longer durations of, summer and those 3 seasons that you truly can enjoy the outdoors prior to getting into winter mode. So I think that really has reinforced that.
You mentioned one kind of buyer profile of somebody maybe already in the valley looking to downsize. I'm just curious, what does that the demographic look like within those reservations you've received? Is it largely second home? Is it concentrated to, say, New York, Chicago, Texas? What does that demographic look like?
Yes.
That's it.
you covered it. Yeah. It's really not uncommon, I think, to some of the historical trends. And, one aspect is we talk about investment that the ski area has made that precipitated, certainly what's happening at the airport and a lot of that direct air service.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
The nonstop flights that we've, enjoyed and seen additional expansion, even with the likes of Southwest and doing some other things. That project and that expansion, I think, is going to even further, the nodes and the areas that we've seen that level of correlation with the Houstons and Dallas and Atlanta and Chicago and New York. California continues to be an interesting growth area. I think that as that access and even further trends of anyone in the Bay Area that's trying to get to Tahoe and, hey, listen, it's taking 5 to 7 hours at the peak times there. I can get a nonstop flight from San Fran to Hayden and in 3 hours be here enjoying Mount Werner. So I think that's going to be an interesting storyline to see some of those called traditionally secondary markets as we continue to expand in the nonstop flight servicing to expand. But a lot of it is, historically to our, kind of core markets that we've seen before. Age demographic, I think we're seeing a little bit of reduction in younger, buyers that are coming in, whether it's, self-made. There's a lot of entrepreneurial activity that's happening right now. One other segment that's been interesting that we've drilled down within our partnership was taking a look at just the transformation of wealth that is slated to happen in the next 2 decades. And it's estimated to have over $84 trillion transfer from generation to generation. And of that, about 15% of those balance sheets and those general holdings being allocated for real estate. So trillions of dollars being able to really be being looked at and deployed for these real estate purchases. And so that was another piece, knowing where Steamboat was positioned from a recreational standpoint in the ski industry. And then, like we talked through, just it's a true community, it's a beautiful valley, that really was a good impetus for our partners to be able to come in and say, listen, let's try to put something together.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the broader market as well. But before we do that, you started to get into what makes 1700 unique and how it differentiates from these other developments. You mentioned Stockman, Astrid, Amble, Wild Air. We talked about the courtyard. What other amenities have you as a team identified and will be executing on that really make this a standalone product?
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned more the exterior and the general land plan between the buildings. And as we traverse now into the actual units, that's where we took another really deep dive in terms of that longer duration primary resident type function. And so first and foremost, these are all single level. Okay. And that was a big piece of conversation that we, in our outreach with potential buyers and brokers, was, hey, listen, especially as you get into the larger floor plans at the base area, it's hard to be able to develop when you're going vertical and dealing with a lot of the topographic realities of the base area to do that in one level. But that was a big piece for us. So all of our floor plans are single level living.
Okay.
They're all accessible via elevator. So we can take, which our parking is all underground that services each one of the buildings, will take you directly up to your residence level. So that convenience and being able to get there without the burden of steps and groceries and this and that. And then from there, we took a further look in terms of a lot of that commercial inventory was geared more for short-term rental, nightly rental activities. So not a lot of storage. So then we took a look at things like walk-in closets, walk-in pantries, ample, if not, large amounts of storage for kitchen and gatherings and things like that. So we took a lot of time within the floor plans to develop, again, how does this live more like a single family home versus, a short-term rental type property.
Yeah.
So those, I would say, would be at the other peak part of our, sensitive and driver kind of profile for the development. And then just understanding that every bit of the expectation on the fit and finish of these properties needs to absolutely set the bar. So every bit of the highest level of materials used, we're partnering with the Ranch House out of Boulder, who we've had history with other projects, and they're very well versed in terms of being able to deliver, great quality materials, but materials that are. It's been interesting with our project are more neutral. In terms of allowing our buyers to come in to really set, their signature and be able to provide, whether it's art or furnishings, maybe paint accent walls and doing some things, but the core quality you can really sense. For instance, our fireplaces are kind of our main architectural feature within the properties, and the tiles that are being used are roughly 4 by 9 feet.
Wow!
So these are going to feel like just larger, very pronounced, artistic elements to the project. And it's stuff like that we really said, hey, listen, how can we add additional personality, but also weave that in a very thoughtful way and curate these spaces. So really excited. And the feedback that we received from reservation holders is, yeah, you guys are headed in the right direction.
This is very unique.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember when you came to the office and kind of first pitched the project, you were also talking about the window sets. Is there something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but floor to ceiling?
Yeah, floor to ceiling. And we had mentioned it before, just our physical location provided a wonderful opportunity to say, listen, how do we maximize the glazing and the window expanse as you're in these great rooms to be able to just stare and take in Mount Werner. And so, yeah, we were able to, within our Ski Time Square building, on the front of the building, be able to program these. And we're talking roughly almost 20 feet by 16 to 18 feet.
Wow.
Window expanses, and that's just the window, and then we have the sliders with transom windows, and so just absolutely awe-inspiring, stunning view corridors coming in from the great rooms.
Incredible. What's the average ceiling height, more or less?
For the project, it's going to be, with the exception of our penthouse, we shot for about 10 feet.
Yeah.
So we try to add as much volume in the subsequent levels as we could, and then our penthouses will be they vault between about 13 to about 17 feet.
Wow. Incredible.
At the peak.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, it sounds like an amazing project. I think I'm excited to see how it unfolds, and I think everybody's excited to see how this wave of development unfolds, and how it impacts the broader market. I know a lot of condo owners at the base area are wondering, okay, how does this, throughout all of the different projects, the Amble probably most relevant right now, starting to close sales, I think, in between $1,500 a foot to $2,300 a foot, based on the closed sales I've seen as of yesterday. How does this impact existing condo values? And of course, every building is going to behave differently. But my question to you is, does this rising tide lift all boats? And you've seen this, of course, in Steamboat over the years in the cycles. But what's your view on what these projects will do to the surrounding values.
Well, and it's interesting. I think we're already starting to get some of that data already.
Yeah.
I mean, to see what's been transpiring, and granted, the number of closings certainly isn't dramatic, but it's occurring. And Edgemont and OSP I'll use for reference. And we're seeing activity at both those projects that you're talking 15, 16 years ago in terms of when they were delivered. And they are transacting and closing in the mid $2,000 a square foot.
Yeah.
And that's occurring right now.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have that level of confidence and data point to then say, okay, now let's go to 2026. We're dealing with new materials, newer construction methodologies, all this improvement in terms of, the physical construction of the buildings.
Modern aesthetic. I mean, that in and of itself is huge.
Yeah. And granted, those buildings they're standing the test of time. I mean, those are obviously well constructed and at the time, but yeah, you can see a bit of when they were delivered, if you will, and to be able to have something that's a little bit more contemporary and modern and current in terms of today's design standards. But that really, for us, as we continue to take a look at the market, to say, okay, what's just happened in the resale world, and to know that we're coming in at or around that from product that was delivered almost 2 decades ago. That was a bit of reassurance. And so I think what will be interesting as we really get to the full release of all this inventory, as we're all kind of in this pre-construction mode right now, is the depth of the market. I think that's a big question is how deep is this? We felt, I think in general terms, talking with other developers, that knowing that there was this coming out, that everyone felt that, yeah, there is depth to the market. Otherwise, I think there would be a little bit more restraint.
Yes.
But ultimately, the proof will be in the pudding. We'll see what happens in the transaction base. But I think another piece that's been interesting back to the Icon and Epic is just our position, our relative value to everything else. And there's still buyers that have yet to even experience Steamboat. I think we know the Steamboat loyalists and those that have been around for years and or if not decades or generations. There's still a number of people that have yet to experience Steamboat.
Sure. I totally agree a lot.
And so I think that's another level of depth to the market that we've yet to experience that we keep in the back of our mind of just how does this runway. But it also, for our project in particular, was a vote of just confidence and reassurance is our size and scale. And that's why we phased the project even further, was to say, listen, we can keep up with market demand. We can kind of see how things are going, not get too far ahead of our skis in terms of delivering such a large quantity of units to the market. And so coming to market with 9 units felt really good for us in our project, and even where we sat and allowing the larger commercial projects to come to market and do what they're doing.
Yeah. So if everything goes to plan for the first building, the first 9 units, when would you be delivering units? Yeah,
so our goal, would be to break ground this summer.
Okay.
So yeah, we're looking forward to hopefully making a little bit of a mess up there, moving some dirt around. But yeah, then we anticipate about a 2-year build schedule for that first building. Okay. So delivery would be mid-28.
Yeah, I mean, still pretty quick.
Yeah, and that's, I think, also the beauty, and as we looked at that, that duration felt good. I mean, to be able to have a conversation with a buyer, and I know like a building like the Stockman is so complex and so large, and it's again going to be beautiful and gorgeous when it's delivered, but they're estimating 4 years in terms of that construction cycle, which is a pretty long duration.
That is.
But we're estimating about 2 years in terms of that construction cycle.
Exciting, super exciting. So obviously you've been very focused in this segment of the market, but you of course are keeping track with what's happening in the broader single family market around town. So just share with me 30 seconds. What have you seen over the last few months? What do you expect for 2026? Let's just hone in on single family as an example.
Yeah, single family and in around the neighborhood, and otherwise, I think what we've seen is the nice product, the newer product tends to be the ones that don't last long. Not entirely surprising, and I think the areas like Old Town, like downtown, those ultimately are still in high demand in terms of that desire and that lifestyle. As we get to the outskirts, of what's happened with that, generally the tide has risen, and even for the communities like Silver Spur and Steamboat 2 and Heritage and Whistler. But the reality is, these entry points now, even for older, less desirable single family, let's call it, you're still talking $1 million to $2 million to get into the market.
Yeah.
So I think, that's a bit of the reality just where we're at. I think it does, put further stress and priority and conversation on our, the affordability index, and just what are we doing for, the larger health and sustainability of our community. And that's where, the Brown Ranch, or whatever iteration or name we're at now. Fortunately, the Housing Authority and some of the newer projects and partners like Gorman, who've done amazing work here locally, that we're seeing some of that addition of affordable, more multifamily kind of graduating in that space. But I think, to your single family question, at some point to craft the townhome and single family in a way and method that is able to introduce and get that entry level back in a bit more parity, because we've kind of obviously the pendulum has gone the other way in terms of meeting the demand of base area and kind of the luxury market, if you will.
Yeah.
But how do we service and how do we kind of support that entry level, which we need to do as a community?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how some of this for sale product being delivered by the Housing Authority, how that helps and how that's absorbed.
Yeah, and it should. I mean, first on the Cottonwoods project seems to, coming out with some just great, stories, just anecdotes in terms of people that have been looking. It's within the city boundary, on the bus route, super convenient, new product. I think a lot of the pieces that we've been talking through in the multifamily space is, starting to impact and move the needle a little bit there, which is, great to hear.
Yeah, definitely. Well, great. This has been very insightful. Anything else you'd like the listeners to know about 1700 and what you're seeing?
Yeah, no, I just, again, appreciate the time. And I'm obviously super excited to share, what we've got going on. Really excited about this project, not only the team, but, really what we're delivering here. And as I'd mentioned, we're different. We're different than the other projects. And I think that's been, for me, knowing and getting to meet a lot of the other developers over the past year, the care and of attention and the quality of product that's coming to market, I'm really excited about. I think, for all of us, we want success. We want a strong and a vibrant base area that, we can all enjoy as community members here in Steamboat. I'm just, really excited about our project and knowing where we're positioned in terms of more of a residential, quiet, private type offering. I think it's one that, again, we've heard that the market and buyers are looking for. So excited to get it to market, start moving some, like I said, dirt around and get it completed.
Super exciting. Yeah, it sounds like you've carved out an interesting niche, and we'll be excited to track along and check back in with you maybe and see how things are going. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, jump on our development website, 1700steamboat.com. You can find all information as it relates to the project, my contact information, as well as the rest of our team. But yeah, that's the best way to get hold of us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, there were some great insights from Kerry there. It's going to be fascinating to watch these projects unfold and see how that affects the base area and the broader market. As you heard, we're going to be pushing new price per square foot metrics and benchmarks that we haven't really seen before when we're talking about product upwards of $3,000 a square foot. Also great to cover the local inventory and some of the work underway by Yampa Valley Housing Authority. I think that's extremely important to keep in the windshield, especially as we see some of these high-end developments start to take shape. With that said, I hope you join me next time. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you or someone you know is interested in real estate, don't hesitate to reach out. You can call me at 970-819-5359 or email me at ryan.cox@steamboatsar.com. Thanks so much. Have a great day.